We have a number of reporters who are going to be asking questions. The first one lined up is Wall Street Journal reporter Paul. Hey, Paul, are you there?
Yeah, I am, Kevin. Can you hear me?
I can. Your question, sir?
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I have three questions. The first two questions are for Rick. In terms of the Terminal 4 redevelopment renegotiated deal today, what should we read into this, new deal? Is it should we look at it as something that's kind of positive in terms of the fact that these deals that were stalled are now being renegotiated and are starting to move ahead? And should we look forward to more deals being renegotiated later this year? Or is it something negative, in the sense that the airport-wide project is being restricted or diminished in some way? Then I have a second question, which is LaGuardia Air Train, Rick. Those FAA documents that were released last week or the week before because of the Riverkeeper Freedom of Information request, they talked about the airport travel time estimates. And I was just wondering, in there, the FAA did point out that the auto travel times are being calculated from Times Square to LaGuardia. And I just wondered, could you tell us what you think the estimated travel time would be for somebody who wanted to take the air train if their origin was Times Square and the destination was LaGuardia? And then my last question is for you, Kevin. The New Jersey Globe, which you have a column in, had a story recently about the new appointees to the Port Authority Board. And in it, the author talked about how you had, in their words, set up a series of political landmines that prevented your replacement by Governor Murphy. I wondered if you accept that that's true, if you did block Governor Murphy from trying to replace you as chair, and also if you think that it's fair and appropriate that the governor of New York gets to appoint the executive director, but that the governor of New Jersey doesn't appear to be able to appoint the chairman.
Well, let me take your questions in order. With respect to Terminal 4, it is certainly an important. Well, let me back up. So we are looking at every single project in our capital plan. What we know is that given the loss of revenue that the Port Authority overall is suffering in terms of the 24-month period through March of 2022, it is not possible to continue to execute on the Port Authority capital plan as it was originally planned. We've already announced that we spent $1.2 billion less in 2020 than the capital plan had contemplated. We have budgeted $1 billion less of capital spending in 2021 than the capital plan had originally contemplated. And we have made clear that we are moving forward capital plan projects that are in construction as close to their original schedule as possible, and we have been successful in doing that. For projects that are not in construction, that is a project-by-project determination. It is a determination that is affected not only by the recovery trajectory of our financial revenues and the activity levels at our facilities, it is also affected by judgments in terms of whether we will or will not receive increased federal funding, and so far we have not been successful. So Terminal 4. Terminal 4 is 95% in terms of this deal financed by private funding. We have been successful in negotiating that. We have been able to bring our 5% share to the table. So it is a vote by the private sector, a vote of confidence in JFK. It is a vote of confidence in the region. It is a vote of confidence in the ultimate return of air travel. But it also represents a 60% reduction in what we had originally planned for Terminal 4 as a keystone of a JFK transformation. So it is a positive in that we were able to move this project forward. We look forward to working with Delta and with the terminal operator, JFK IAT, on what will be what will facilitate Delta in moving out of Terminal 2 and centralizing its operations in Terminal 4. Very pleased that we were able to take this initial step. Disappointed that the impact of the pandemic has forced this reduction in scale. That is not something that we should want, and we are hopeful that we will be able to work with the Congress to see our way through in terms of making additional steps forward. With respect to the LaGuardia Air Train, the headline here is that the FAA has conducted a thorough environmental review of all aspects of the air train. The final environmental impact statement was published last month. We look forward to the record of decision from the FAA.
All aspects of the air train were thoroughly examined by the FAA. It issued a 600-page EIS supported by 25,000 pages of appendices. Based on its analysis, it agreed with the Port Authority that our proposed route, our recommended route, should be the preferred alternative. That's the big picture. It would be, in my view, irresponsible and indefensible not to move forward with this project, which will reduce congestion on the roads, reduce the greenhouse gases released by people trying to come to the airport by car. It will get people out of their cars, and it will create a reliable and predictable travel from either Grand Central or Penn Station to the airport in under 30 minutes.
So an individual can calculate, come back to your question, Paul, can calculate exactly what their travel time to the airport will be, and they can count on it. So whatever your travel time is to either if you're coming from Manhattan, whatever your travel time is to either Grand Central on the east side or Penn Station on the west side, you can know that when you get to either of those two major transit hubs, you will, from the time you get onto the Long Island Railroad at either of those two stations, in 16 minutes you will be at Metz Willets Point, and from that interchange, in 6 minutes, you will get to the airport. So that is what we're trying to create, a reliable and predictable mass transit link to LaGuardia. That's the top travel times from Midtown Manhattan. But the fact is, the connection at Metz Willets Point gives people a mass transit way from throughout the subway system and throughout the network of the Long Island Railroad.
So in terms of your third question, I hope we have some other time for the other 7 reporters who follow you, Paul. I think I heard your question about the Globe article and the characterization of New York getting the executive director and New Jersey gets the chair. So the way the New Jersey Constitution is laid out, it gives the governor broad powers to nominate candidates for various boards, including the Port Authority, for their 6-year terms, and the Senate has advice and consent. That is how I got here, and that's how the current candidates and commissioners have gotten here, and that's how future nominees and future commissioners will get here. I enjoy working closely with Governor Murphy and his Chief of Staff, George Helmy in particular, working closely with Senate President Steve Sweeney and Speaker Coughlin, and working with the entire legislative delegations on both sides of the aisle. In terms of the selection of the chair, it's done among the commissioners, and that principle has worked well for the last few decades, and I continue to look forward to serve as the chair for the future. Next question, Zach Griff, the points guy.
Hi, thank you everyone for everything today. I had 3 questions on the Terminal 4 redevelopment plan. The first is I'd like to learn more about the new lounge facilities and upgrades to the head house relative to the $400 million that was originally planned as part of the February 2020 plan. I want to as well understand what disruptions you guys are predicting for passengers and air traffic during the 2-year construction in the project scope. When will Terminal 2 demolition occur? And are there any other updates for the other terminals that were originally announced for redevelopment and expansions?
Well, let me take headlines here, and if you want additional details, we can handle them offline. What we know in terms of the amenities is that they're going to be 25% of what we had originally wanted. Originally, $400 million was to be devoted to upgrade with the reduced scope of the terminal and the impact of coronavirus. It is a set of initiatives that will be in the vicinity of $100 million, and that much of that is still being designed by Delta and JFK IAT, but happy to talk more about it offline. In terms of disruptions, we've learned a lot from LaGuardia. We are going to be developing both traffic plans and other assistance that we can provide to minimize disruption. That will be our mantra. Construction inevitably has impacts on airport operations, but hopefully passengers will recognize the inconvenience, which we will be seeking to minimize, will be worth the new airport facilities. Finally, with respect to Terminal 2, the goal is to have Terminal 2 closed in the course of 2022, and again, we can talk you through the schedule in more detail offline.
All right, next reporter from New York Times, Pat McGeehan. Pat, you there?
Paul asked all my questions.
All right, Pat, you go first next meeting.
All right, thanks.
You got it. Next one is Larry Higgs from the Star Ledger.
How you doing? I've just got a couple of questions. First one is for the CFO. How much did the 3 snow events in February cost the Port Authority? Second question is, will the Port Authority begin applying for federal fundings directly for specific projects? And the final question is there a decision on a list of specific projects for the capital plan to be put on hold?
Let me try to touch. We'll get you the number on the snow expenses. We budget a specific amount for a particular year based on a 3-year rolling average. What we know is that the 3 snow events in February required expense that exceeded what we had anticipated. It's an annual level, but we'll get you that number. With respect to projects in the capital plan, at this point, it is still a project by project evaluation. We had been holding off, trying to work that through to the nth degree until we knew the amount of federal funding. We obviously now know exactly what we got from the stimulus bills, which was significantly below our $3 billion loss just in the first 24 4 months. So we are going back to the capital plan with that framework to evaluate project by project, look at the timeline, and make decisions about what we can and what we can't do. But we do not have a specific list at this time. Trying to remember your third.
Decisions been made specifically on capital.
Well, we haven't. We have not made specific. I mean, it is project by project, and in terms of what we've reported on Terminal 1, we are delighted. Something is better than nothing. $1.5 billion is a very strong start. We're frustrated by the pandemic, but the financial damage it has done and the reduction in air travel are real. So we have worked through with Delta and with JFK IAT what is realistic at this point. I think we're frustrated that it's a 60% reduction in the near term, but we have preserved an option lasting through 2024 to be able to recover and build out close, not all the way, but close to the original plan in the event that air travel returns.
Thanks. The third question was, will the Port Authority consider applying for federal funding, specifically through the Biden infrastructure plan, for specific projects?
Right. So the answer there is we're going to do. We need to know what the shape of the federal action is. If the federal action creates an allocation formula and will include us, we'll get an allocation. That would move the money faster. If the Biden administration creates a application by application, project by project framework, we will apply when our projects meet the standards. And what we need is federal help given the financial damage, and it will depend on what the legislation looks like.
All right, moving on to the next reporter from Politico, Danielle.
Hi there. Apologies, I cut out for a bit, so if I repeat a question that was asked, sorry in advance. I have two questions. The first is, I was, with congestion pricing beginning to move forward in New York, I was curious if Port Authority would be interested in pursuing a congestion pricing system for its bridges and tunnels as well, given the financial fallout and the fact that traffic has rebounded much faster than other modes of transit. And then the second question was, I was just wondering if, someone could reflect on the past ridership numbers we see, what you're predicting for recovery, and if there's concern at this point about, not reaching full recovery due to work from home patterns.
Yeah, to your first question, Danielle, as far as the consideration for the Port Authority to do their own congestion pricing, that's not a consideration. And in terms of the actual numbers with the past numbers, from the beginning of the year till present, maybe even a forecast, we could have that brought to your attention, Danielle.
Yeah. I mean, as I reported at the meeting, past ridership for the last 6 months or so has been at 25% of pre-COVID levels, and of our 4 lines in terms of facilities, it is recovering the slowest. That is consistent with what other commuter railroads have seen, and we are in the process of adjusting our financial projections to take account of that slower than expected recovery.
If I could.
Danielle, you there? That was okay. Moving ahead to the New York Post, Dave, Mayor. Dave, you there from the New York Post? Let's get back to Dave. Oh, so Dave, you there?
Thank you. Paul asked all my questions as well.
Okay. You will go second after Pat next time. I apologize for that. No more 3-part, 7-part questions from Paul. Mark Hallam from the New York. Is Mark there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Hey, Mark, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I want to revisit the NYU study from February that sort of implicated the Christopher Street station on the path as having the worst air quality in the study. I was wondering where you guys are on the investigation that you guys promised at the time, and sort of what actions you're taking.
Well, it is underway. It is drawing on external public health and scientific experts. The one thing we have confirmed is that the dust levels that were reported are all within the OSHA standards related to short periods of exposure. But we want to do this in depth, and we're still midstream.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Last reporter, Clayton from the Daily News. Clayton, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have three questions. One, can you clarify one thing in the financial report, noting that you have 103 days of cash on hand? Just help me explain it to my readers. Does that mean that you guys will expect to issue more bonds by the end of July, barring if you do not receive more federal funding? Second question is, what percentage of Port Authority employees have received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine? And the third one, you mentioned briefly a return or plans to return to in-person board meetings. Can you give us an update on any benchmarks or any plans or a little bit more detail on what those discussions look like and what the forecast looks like for you guys returning to in-person meetings?
Yeah, I'll take Clay. I'll take 2 and 3. So in terms of the percentages, by our numbers, about 28% of our, at least 28% of our employees have received a second dose, are fully vaccinated, and at least 38% have received at least one dose. And that's the best numbers we have to date. We keep track of that daily. The second question he had was the board meeting. So we have talked, Clayton, about slowly going back to the new normal, and there are discussions internally that we've only recently talked about as to when we're going to start going back to a live board meeting, whether that's going to be half virtual, half live. We're discussing internally. We haven't made a decision yet in terms of what markers or metrics we're going to use to make those determinations. We're just literally starting the conversation, but we're hoping to have some answer by maybe the next board meeting as to when that's going to occur. And then, Rick, in terms of the 103 days?
Yeah, the first comment is the decisions as to if and when to go into the capital markets is made by our CFO, and she will go in as necessary in terms of both our operating income and our capital spending. So it is not necessarily driven by that single financial metric, but she will. We had a major bond offering at the beginning of the year, but she will be making this judgment as the year progresses.
All right, those are all the questions. I want to thank you all for taking in our gaggle. Thank you.